This is Southern Cross News with Joe Palmer.
Good evening everyone and welcome to Southern Cross News. Tasmania is expecting to land even more tourists following the announcement of direct flights between Hobart and Perth today. Tourism bosses say the new leg will provide a welcome boost to visitor numbers as well as a two-leg trip to Europe.
Preparing to take off, Virgin Australia to be flying direct to Perth from Hobart in September.
It's one of the top connecting markets out of Tasmania for travellers out of Hobart, so it really has been top of our radar for some time.
The airline to host flights 3 times a week, taking around 4 hours, creating capacity for 55,000 bums on aircraft seats.
But we're now at the point where we feel that the demand is absolutely there to sustain a direct service between the two cities.
It'll obviously increase the ability for Tasmanians to go west, but also to bring more sandgropers over to see what we have to offer here.
Tourism bosses hailing the news as a huge development for the state's visitor economy, as Tasmania's biggest tourism campaign continues trying to draw visitors south.
This year in 2018 we'll invest another $400,000 directly into the Perth market to support these flights and create sustainable travel opportunities from the west.
With demand soaring, Virgin's also increasing services between Brisbane and Sydney.
We're obviously looking at other opportunities across our network and we review that on a regular basis.
While today's development allows Tasmanian passengers to fly to Perth and then direct onto Europe, overseas flights out of Hobart's International Airport still remain on the cards.
So we're working with the carriers to demonstrate that we've got that market demand, and on this side we're working with our airport to ensure that the infrastructure is in place.
Louise HEDGER, Southern Cross News.
An Integrity Commission report has exposed the deteriorating relationship between Tasmania's former Children's Commissioner and the state government. Although the staff of former Human Services Minister Jackie Petrusma has been cleared of any wrongdoing, the report details an increasingly rocky relationship.
Laying bare the inner workings of child protection. A tabled Integrity Commission report reveals the crumbling relationship between the staff of former Human Services Minister and the previous Children's Commissioner, and the significant impact this had on their working relationship. Mark Morrissey resigned suddenly as Children's Commissioner last year, the role historically plagued by a high turnover rate.
Mr Morrissey walked halfway through his term. He was an excellent Children's Commissioner, and Tasmania is poorer because he is no longer in that role.
All 8 complaints filed against Ms Petrusma and her staff were dismissed today. The allegations included Ms Petrusma's Chief of Staff asking Mr Morrissey to avoid putting sensitive information in writing so it could not be traced, and that staff were disrespectful of Mr Morrissey's role and had asked him, on occasion, to criticise the Labor Party despite his non-partisan position.
There's no doubt that this report states categorically that the claims by Labor were baseless.
The report ultimately cleared Ms Petrusma's Chief of Staff of any wrongdoing, saying misunderstandings had arisen from the rocky relationship between herself and the Commissioner.
The Children's Commissioner should be free to make frank and fearless advice to the government, be free to make public comment on all matters concerning children and young people without fear of reprisal.
In a statement, Mr Morrissey says differing viewpoints can often manifest in highly contentious areas, such as child protection. He said he holds a different recollection of some key events in the report, but it was not best to dwell on them, saying he respected the process. Michelle Wisby, Southern Cross News.
The state government is strongly rejecting the leaked findings of a long-awaited report into the future of Australia's GST carve-up. The key recommendation of the Productivity Commission's report would see Tasmania miss out on hundreds of millions of dollars in future funding. But the Prime Minister and Premier were quick to reject the finding, reassuring Australians that all states would be better off under the federal government's proposal.
Firstly, these are findings and recommendations of the Productivity Commission. Secondly, the federal government has already ruled out adopting them, so you can bin that.
The Premier needs to be open and transparent about what briefings he has undertaken. He needs to be open and transparent with the Tasmanian public on how he's going to stand up for Tasmania.
The report will be released in full tomorrow. A Tasmanian business has secured a lucrative contract to build evacuation parts for new Australian frigates. Life Raft Systems Australia now holding a $10 million deal as part of the Australian Navy's $35 billion future frigate program.
So each of those 9 frigates will be supplied with 4 marine evacuation systems, which are evacuation slides with a 115-person life raft attached. All of those life rafts and slides, those systems will be manufactured right here in Del Park.
We are building awareness of our capability, our extraordinary capability in Tasmania, to the rest of the world.
The program is expected to create 10 full-time local jobs, with the contract running for 10 years. Campaigning in the northwest seat of Braddon has intensified, with both the opposition leader and health minister today hitting the campaign trail. The government has ridiculed a low turnout at a luncheon held by Bill Shorten, but the Labor leader insists he's campaigning harder.
Stepping back into Braddon, Bill Shorten arrived in BURNIE bearing cash for the coastal trail between Latrobe and Wynyard.
Labor will commit $8.8 million to complete this marvellous Cradle Coast Authority road.
This is a huge project for the Northwest. It's a game changer. It's going to create a number of jobs, a lot of economic development.
While the opposition leader is confident of winning the marginal seat on July 28, selling actual seats at a Labor business luncheon in Devonport today proved a little harder, with just half the room filled.
If some Liberal business people would rather listen to their Liberal leader than the Labor leader, I don't take it personally.
He says it's just a case of holding 2 Northwest forums instead of 1, but the Liberals say businesses aren't warming to Labor.
Mr Shorten walked away from small business in Tasmania, and small businesses obviously walked away from him.
The federal minister was busy writing cheques for mental health funding, pledging nearly $5 million over 4 years for more psychology services and extended nursing hours.
It's an area of need within this community, right across the region, and we want to put in place practical solutions that will mean more services, more access.
25 days still to go until the big day. Sean McComish, Southern Cross News.
There was controlled chaos on the tarmac at Launceston Airport today at the scene of a mock plane crash. Using a disused aircraft, emergency services sprung into action to test how well they respond to crisis.
Scrambling into damage control. This is the first response at the scene of a small aircraft that's crash landed. It might look like a serious emergency, but luckily this is just a training exercise.
With any airport there's a risk to obviously aircrafts taking off and landing. The idea behind it is to measure and practice multi-agency responses, especially in somewhere like Launceston Airport.
There's no actual danger, but those involved operate as though the threat is genuine, with props like this airframe creating a sense of urgency.
Yeah, well, that really did add a touch of realism to today's exercise, and that's been an airframe, a disused airframe that's been kindly donated.
The airport says hands-on training like this helps to gauge how well it can handle a crisis.
What this was really designed to do is to really rehearse and test our airport emergency plan.
While participants take the opportunity to put their training into action.
There was probably 120 plus involved between the responding agencies and volunteers.
The chances of a scenario like this occurring are low, but emergency services say you can't be too prepared, with the skills put into practice here today potentially life-saving. Once assessed, the results will be used to pinpoint grey areas and determine how the response can be improved.
We're hoping then that if we do identify any deficiencies, that we can look into that and we can assess whether or not what we need to do to make a better response in the future.
Judy Augustine, Southern Cross News.
Nurses at the Launceston General Hospital have taken industrial action, staging a silent vigil to highlight overcrowding concerns.
Bed block causes admitted patients to stay in the emergency department, often for days on end. This means that new patients presenting to the emergency department are often told there are no beds available.
The union is also urging the government to implement the same escalation levels as the Royal Hobart Hospital.
The current level 3 escalation that did occur last week wasn't adequate to address the concerns that members had, and they believe that an additional level 4 escalation is required.
The Health Minister says he's disappointed the situation has escalated, but assures the government is working to provide the best outcome. A new program has been launched in Hobart in a bid to help new migrants to settle in Tasmania. 135 municipalities from around the world take part in the Welcoming Cities program, with Glenorchy Council the latest on the list.
I think that Hobart's broadly dealing with is what we would call secondary migration. So people coming here either as international students or skilled workers and then moving on to other cities. And really what we're talking about is how do we create communities where everyone can belong.
The organisation says migrants provide a significant economic boost to local communities. The Tasmania Fire Service is ramping up calls for all bedrooms to have a working smoke alarm installed. Newly dressed trucks will be spreading the message far and wide in an attempt to prevent avoidable deaths this winter.
We are promoting photoelectric smoke alarms at this stage in every bedroom, because they will pick up smoke very early on and they will alert us and be able to then formulate a plan to get out of the house.
Since March, the Tasmania Fire Service has responded to over 100 house fires, and 80% of those house fires were accidental starts. So we need to have systems in place in people's homes that tell them that there's a problem.
The TFS says homes without smoke alarms increase the risk of death by 60%. Now let's take a look at the day's business and finance news thanks to Tasplan, your local super fund. Australian shares have closed lower, hurt by falls in banking and energy stocks on concerns about heightened trade tensions between the US and China. The ASX 200 index fell 26.8 points. A short time ago, the Australian dollar was trading at 74.07 US cents and 109.3 New Zealand cents.
Lauderdale's premiership credentials have been given a massive boost, with the side set to welcome back Thor Boscott for Saturday's clash with Clarence. The star bomber hasn't played a game all season due to a foot injury and was expected to be out for another few weeks. But assistant coach Clint says he's fit and raring to go.
His presence alone, he takes a key defender if he goes forward. When he's in the midfield, you always have to worry about him at stoppages. So we just want him to get through the game unscathed.
Well, Clarence's season has been dealt a blow, with midfielder Jackson O'Brien to miss the next few weeks due to a hamstring strain, as the Roos look to back up last weekend's 47-point win over the Tigers.
We probably stitch up a top 3 position. If they win, then they're still in the hunt for that top 3 position. So, big game.
And Webberley says he expects the Southern Bombers to come out firing following their 24-point loss to North Launceston. And both sides will have something other than ladder positions to play for, with the Speak Up, Stay Chatty Cup on the line for the 4th year in a row. The TSL tradition helping to raise awareness for suicide prevention among the state's football community.
We really like to pride ourselves on doing a lot of work in sporting clubs, and Clarence and Lauderdale were 2 clubs that embraced our message right from the start, and so I think we're really proud of the fact that they continue to do that.
Clarence are the current cup holders, having beaten their Eastern Shore rivals by 18 points last year. And Tasmania's best young footballers have done the state proud, with 7 of our draft hopefuls competing for the Allies against Western Australia today in the final round of the National Under-18 Series. Fraser Turner helping the side claw back from a 27-point half-time deficit.
Fraser Turner sets sail and nails it. A couple in a row for the Allies.
He's another one that's had an unbelievable championships, Fraser Turner, a young man out of the Clarence Footy Club.
North Launceston's Taryn Thomas then getting in on the act in the final quarter to bring the Allies within reach.
Taryn Thomas with a classy finish reduces the margin to 8.
We've got ourselves a game now, and that's what he can do, Taryn Thomas.
But it wasn't quite enough to get his side home, with WA holding on for the 7-point win. The Launceston Tornadoes are preparing for their toughest challenge of the season this weekend, taking on Seabull leaders Bendigo. The Braves are yet to drop a game, but Torns coach Derrick Washington is confident he's got the firepower to change that.
Sitting precariously at 5th on the ladder with just 4 games to go, a clean sweep could see the Tawns finish as high as 3rd, while a collapse could mean slipping out of finals contention.
My ladies there, they're playing very well right now. They're starting to learn each other. Starting to dig down and play some defence, and that's what you need to win the championship.
Following the side's gritty 8-point win over Dandenong, the Tawns travel to Bendigo this weekend to do battle with the unbeaten Braves, the side who got the better of them in last year's conference final.
And they're a great team. They got Kelly Wilson. She's a great point guard, but we got Lauren Mashfield, who's an Opals player. And also, too, they got Nadine Payne, and then we got Lauren Nicholson.
Following Saturday's match, the Tawns fly to Melbourne to take on the 8th place Tigers. To cricket, and former Australian and Tasmanian Tigers player Tim COYLE has been officially announced as the head coach of the new Greater Northern Raiders side, which will enter the state's Premier League competition from next season.
I'm very passionate about the north of Tasmania, understanding its history, being a player that's come from here.
COYLE led the Tigers to their first Pura Cup title as coach 11 years ago, and is confident the north and northwest of the state will eventually have the talent to see him achieve similar success in the CTPL.
It's well overdue to give the north of the state the injection it needs to continue to stay relevant in the big picture of Tasmanian and Australian cricket.
With the side set to play 9 home games for the season, negotiations are still underway to confirm the side's home base, while the playing group is set to be finalised in the coming weeks.
And a very happy 4th of July to all those celebrating American Independence Day for what probably is the second greatest nation on earth. The weather for the greatest state in Australia was a bit mixed today, with gusty winds and periods of rain for some. Hobart 17, Launceston and Devonport 15, Burnie 14 degrees. 19 was the high at Friendly Beaches, some temperatures up to 5 above average. Flinders Island got to 18, St Helens and Ouse 17, Grove 16 today, King Island and Lowhead 15, Strawn at top of 12. Now, a combination of low and middle cloud over the state today, most of it over the north and west. The best rainfall we had to 3 o'clock was 20 millimetres at Mount Reid. Now, that cloud is part of something bigger as it stretches back over South Australia with a cold front. The speckled cloud behind that system indicates a colder air mass approaching. Another cold front is over Western Australia as well. Tomorrow the cold front moves away to the southeast, while the next one and a trough cross the Bight. Northwesterly winds at 15 to 20 knots, reaching 30 knots over the south and even stronger over western waters, swells to 3 metres. A gale warning, that's from Southeast Cape to Sandy Cape, a strong wind warning for remaining coastal waters, a small craft wind alert for the lakes, and also a flood watch for north-eastern catchments. For tomorrow, of course, a late shower moving through with that front. Hobart 16, 15 for Cygnet and 15 for New Norfolk with showers developing. Launceston, rain, possibly some heavy falls and 15 the top, 15 for Devonport with that same forecast, rain for Campbelltown and 14. A top of 14 for Burnie with rain, possibly heavy as well. 15 for Strawn, getting windy in the afternoon. Same for Smithton, both on 15 degrees. St Helens, showers increasing, 15 the top, 16 for Swansea. Fingal, showers increasing, a high of 15 degrees. On Friday, rain statewide, easing to showers in the afternoon before contracting to the west and far south. Showers again on Saturday, easing later in the day as well. Some snow to 700 metres. Snow on the peaks on Sunday with a shower over the west and south. Showers easing from Perth tomorrow, a shower for Adelaide and Melbourne, sunny and 23 in Sydney, a shower forecast for Brisbane, but Darwin is putting on a show as they start preparing for cup season there. It's clear in Hobart at the moment, 13 degrees, Launceston cloudy and 11, and 12 degrees in Devonport with a few showers around. And that is the weather for the 4th of July. And just looking at you there, Joe, you've just reminded me I've got to pick up some mustard for my celebratory hot dog dinner tonight.
Oh, thanks. I think, no? Go have your hot dog. All right, that's all from us for now. Have a lovely evening. We'll see you a bit later.